It's March 8th, 9 a.m., Finance Committee. We do not have a quorum, and it doesn't sound like, based on the interactions, I just got a text from Dan that he's not coming. We're not going to have one, so I don't think we can take votes on anything or make approval, but we could still convene the meeting, I guess, and
we could have a consensus, I guess, to put in our minutes to send to the full board.
Sounds good to me. I don't think we had anything we needed to necessarily vote on today anyway, so we'll just carry on with the meeting and vote to send it to the board so they can understand what we talked about or the information that was presented. So we'll call the meeting to order. I don't know if we have to approve the agenda, but maybe we can. The consensus is, I think, Sherry, do you agree that we'll approve the agenda?
You can't.
I know. A little sarcasm here.
Well, I was just reading to make sure that it was okay, according to Robert's rules, to even do any of this. That's what I was doing.
Okay, and do we have any public comments? No, not yet. Okay. Hearing none, we have Randy Schultz, but Randy's not here. And
I am filling in for him.
Okay, yeah.
Sheriff just walked in. I guess you guys had a deer strike with the squad car. Do you have any more information or need anything?
It's at the body shop right now. We haven't heard from them on it's 2016 with 60-some thousand miles on it. State Police handled the accident. It happened on 49 north of Cissna Park, and I'm waiting for their report, and then hopefully they're going to email me that today. I'll get it up to the office, and then it's being looked at by Watsika Auto Body. So.
Okay. Any other questions for us on the insurance side? Nothing flooded, so of yours, I should say.
Right.
Okay. Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
I have one question.
Yes.
How's it going with the work comp training stuff to kind of reduce that?
I thought they had some loss control people out here not too long ago. Is that true? I can check on that.
2 months ago.
Was it
last month or the month before that Tim Brewery came?
Right.
And then I think the next step was he was going to meet individually, like with sheriff and highway, because that's where our losses really are. Sheriff, did you ever get a call?
I have not met with him.
Okay.
Concerning the current workers' comp case pending at the sheriff's office, I have talked to an attorney through the risk management on that, but as far as meeting with anyone specifically at my office, no, I haven't met with anyone yet.
Okay.
Okay. I can follow up with Tim
That'd be
and
great.
make sure, and then let Anita know. Is that
That's fine.
okay?
There may be a message or that he got to me
Okay.
a while
I'll
back
follow up.
that I'll check, because I don't remember if he was calling specifically to meet with me or if he was calling to talk about the pending case that we have.
Okay. I'll follow up with Tim and let Anita know. And great. Anything else? All right. Thank you.
Susie?
Things are going good on our end. We received an email from Health Alliance that I did forward on to Anita and Amanda that they sent out the wrong benefit summaries with the plan packets. It said PPO instead of POS, so they have corrected that, and we'll be sending out all new summaries with the correction so everyone knows. Just in case any employees ask, it is the POS network. It's just that benefit summary did say PPO. They're correcting it and mailing out new ones. Other than that, things are good.
Very good.
All right.
Thank you.
Yep.
Department heads. Eric, I guess we'll go around the room.
I have nothing to report. I attended because I knew the audit was completed, but
we have any updates on these grants and those kind of things? Or-
So far, I've not been able to locate any additional grants. The one grant that I was able to locate specifically said on it that it had to be populations greater than 500,000. So that one kind of put it through the floor on me, unfortunately. So I'm trying to keep an ear out and keep researching to see if I can find anything for ETSB to give us any type of extra funding in there.
It might be worth, I mean, so back in, I think where some of the knowledge of, that we might even be eligible for grants was Anita, me, and Kyle, I think, had a conversation with the Illinois State Police, I don't know, back when we were doing the budget or whenever.
Right.
Last summer,
Like August.
somewhere in there,
something.
and they were the ones that said, hey, you guys should be doing this. It might be worth talking with them if they know of it. I mean, that's where the whole concept of we should possibly be able to get a grant came from. It might be worth, if you haven't already, circling back with them and seeing what he's talking about. I mean, this guy from the state police, I don't remember.
Carl Pound,
Yeah, I-
gave me the contact information for him. I'm getting a couple of other reporting things wrapped up, and
Okay.
he's next on the list.
Well, very good. I think that's important, especially with all the other monetary things we got going on, that anything we can do would help. And they seem to that, in those conversations we had back then, were very
Right.
confident that there should be monies available, so I think that's definitely worth the effort. Okay, Mindy?
Nothing to report.
Okay.
I don't have anything.
Okay,
I think you reported the health.
okay. Eric?
Well, financially, concerning the disaster, there are a couple of expenses that have been incurred. I have a couple of receipts that I actually haven't had a chance to look at, so on and so forth. But in terms of disaster expenses, those get filed differently, just letting you know. I don't have any numbers yet, and I apologize for that. Just a couple of items that we have had to spend money on include porta potties for the Health Resource Center. A couple things for animal control to operate their emergency pet shelter over at Jefferson Plaza.
So you had those claims?
I'm collecting those claims, yes. Well, I'm collecting those receipts and invoices so that I can start compiling them for public assistance damage assessment, to figure out our total costs and apply for federal aid for that. If possible, I'll have to hand those off to you.
Okay, so we have liabilities that we got at claims we have to get in and get paid, is that right?
Yes.
We owe something, so we should get those in so we can get those, whoever they are, paid. Right, okay. And then, Doc brought me 3 things yesterday after the tax committee of 2 of his employees and then the animal control warden and the time they spent taking care of these animals out at the shelter for all those flood victims. They had, instead of just a few, like 3 animals down in his place, they had, I think he said in tax, what did he say, 27 dogs and
Something like that.
He was up to 30-some animals.
10 cats. So they were going out there and they have all this time. He listed their hours, but not their rates of pay, so I asked him what their rates of pay were, and he says, well, the county can pay him anything. He's not paid them. So it's not like he's incurred the cost and is asking for reimbursement. He's asking the county to pay these people direct, which we can do just as subcontractors. I don't know, I'm going to have to talk to Eric or John.
What
I don't-
happened, just for the people that weren't there, his employees of the animal hospital, which has nothing to do with the county animal control, showed up to help and were working, sounds like some excessive hours in the name of trying to do what's right for the community kind of thing.
And they were asked to, it was necessary that they were
Yeah, well,
deeming what the problem was. So.
right, because they were so overwhelmed and there's 30 whatever animals and they needed people. So he asked them and they willingly came, I guess, to help out with what was really an Iroquois County issue, even though they're not Iroquois County employees, and he was indicating that, well, you know, they're not paid for that, but maybe it would be good as part of the disaster fund that the county compensate them for the time that they put in to help out the county. But
I would suggest in this case that he gets a dollar amount
Yeah.
to Eric, because it really needs to go through
Right,
one particular source coming at the finance.
right. I have them in my office, and I just put a sticky on to give them to John, because I wasn't sure what to do with them either, or who was gonna approve them. It wouldn't be me, so,
Dr. Youssef also handed out just handwritten hours that they worked, is that what he gave you?
no, it was typed. He
Okay.
asked them for it, and he said, he asked them like if they work 4 hours to put down like an hour or two, trying not to be excessive. And if I look at the hours on this list, there really isn't a whole lot there.
Oh, okay, so it's a small dollar
It's
amount.
small.
Yeah, I would suggest going to Eric.
If Dr. Youssef doesn't give us a rate, I'll try to check, FEMA has reimbursable rates.
Okay,
That's typically, I don't know that it happens for pet care, but I'll check.
okay, great.
Keith, sorry, Bob.
Part of the tax is the, board review has sent final, notices out to complainants. So we are, getting ready to close for, 2017, payable 18, so send our information to the Department of Revenue. Lisa will be notified to send the final abstracts into this, down to Springfield, and then the extension process can get started. So we're going forward with that, and then obviously, no way of knowing the implications of the flood yet. It would appear that there would be more implication to the city of Waseca than the surrounding area overall, but I have no idea what those numbers are yet. I've been more working on the zoning side with damage assessments in the rural areas rather than worrying about assessment problems at this point, because that'll be all for 18 payable 19. And with the governor's declaration of disaster, we are required to give opportunity for property owners to get assessment relief based on the date of the flood. So that will be down the road in the spring and the summer. So that's all.
Thank you. Sheriff?
Yeah, a couple things. We heard about the squad car that happened on Saturday night, Friday night, over the weekend, where we hit a deer. I had a retirement the first week of February. Mike Coleman, with 28 years on, had left, retired. I replaced him with a police officer who was already certified, so there was no training costs incurred in that. So that's where, as far as that goes, I just wanted to hand this out for you folks for your own information. There's a couple of proposals I put together. I know the public safety tax that's, I guess July 1 they started collecting, so it hasn't quite been a year yet. I believe there's about $211,000 in that currently, and these proposals are what I've come up with. I think for your budget you looked at expending maybe $200,000 out of that this year. The first one would be to hire 2 sheriff's deputies. Not to bore you, but 2010 we had 19 sworn positions, including the sheriff. We've got 13 now. We lost 6 positions due to budget cuts. I would ask that to hire 2 new ones. If that is agreed upon in the next few months, the earliest I could probably get someone hired or get 2 hired and sent to the academy would be July. So we'd be talking 5 months of this fiscal year. So there's the salary for each one for those 5 months would be the $17,745, and then of course with the IMRF contributions, workers' comp, healthcare, and that, if you want to take that out of it as well, my estimation was around $50,000 for those 5 months. Training, they've got to go to a 14-week training academy.
4 of them in the state. I would have to get them enrolled in that. Uniforms and equipment would be about $5,000 apiece. The big costs in that would, of course, be the bulletproof vests, which are about $1,000, the radios, portable radio for each one, which would be about $800, and then, of course, their uniforms and coats and boots and all that kind of stuff. And then purchasing a new squad car with all new equipment. What we do most times when we swap out squad cars is we don't buy new equipment every year. Some of the equipment we can reuse. This would be one where we'd have to buy all new equipment. And the Chevy has quit making the Impala police package, which is what we've gone with because it's been the cheapest police package out there between Dodge, Ford, and Chevy. So there's going to be some, it's going to be a little more to get squad cars now. The total for that proposal would be approximately $110,000. If personnel is not the way you want to go at this point, that would be my first suggestion, to hire 2 people, but if the board committee and the board deems that's not the best way to go, there are also some equipment issues. The LiveScan fingerprint machine, which is in the jail, it's 10 years old. I used to pay $2,500 a year to keep a maintenance agreement on it. Well, they notified me last fall that due to the age of the software and the equipment, they will no longer support it. So to get a new one, it would be $25,000. New portable radios. The portable radios we got I think actually back in 2006. So those are 12 years old right now. We would go through a local provider of radios, and that was the bid I got. So for 16 of them, that would include, currently right now, we have a portable over at the, with the court security officer at the courthouse, and then the jail staff uses portables as well as they're working. So the 16 would cover the 13 deputies currently, and the two in the jail and 1 over at the courthouse. The MDC computers, mobile data computers, again, those are pushing 10 years, 8 to 10 years old. We got a notice from Verizon because our squad car computers run off of Verizon's network. They are 3G, those computers. After January 1 of 19, they will not support 3G. It's got to be 4G or LTE. So they sent a notice out, and I'm sorry, it's December 31st of 2019 because it was almost 2 years. They sent a notice out that, you know, those of you with older equipment, be mindful that come December 31st of 2019, our cellular network is not going to provide the 3G for those computers and the squad cars. Those with the docking stations run about $7,000 a piece, so that's $56,000. And then tasers. The tasers that we have right now, I've got 2 new ones, but the deputies carry tasers as part of their less than lethal options that they have nowadays. We don't deploy them a lot. We deploy them enough, and a lot of times just the sight of one gets compliance out of someone before it is deployed. So those are a little over $1,000 a piece, and the total for that proposal would be $108,800. So that's just food for thought. What I would primarily want to do is hire personnel. If we could hire 2 additional, that would put 4 on at nights. Right now we have 3 on at nights. During the daytime I have 2 on, but myself and the 2 investigators are around and can help out. So having 4 on at nights at 10-hour shifts, that would take us down from having, instead of 6 hours a day where there's only 1 deputy on, that would knock it down. We'd only have a 2-hour time frame in a 24-hour period where there's only 1 deputy who's on duty at the time. So something to look at. Any questions, you can ask them now. If you want to digest it and talk at a future meeting, that's fine too, but it's just kind of wanted to give the committee and let them take a look at it.
Yeah, thank you for doing that, and it's always good to have.
Yeah, no, I understand. I
Give us-
wasn't expecting any kind of decision today. It was just some food for thought.
Yeah, we gotta,
Thank you.
it's definitely good to know and have numbers around it, so that helps out a lot, just having figures around what you are thinking, so. Okay, that's all the department heads. Oh, you, yes.
I did talk to Mindy yesterday. All the final year-end revenue and expense reports have been distributed to department heads that tie into the audit. So they all see what their area of their functional area, how it ended up after all audit adjustments, year-end accruals, etc. And Mindy is the one who came in and questioned right away the general fund revenue. So I did an analysis. I used our budget worksheet, and it looks like this, and you all have a copy of it. And this is the general fund revenue. It's 2 pages, okay? And so what I did is kind of change. I used the 2017 budget is there, the forecast at 6:30 that we used for setting the FY18 budget, and then the 2017 final numbers. And our final revenue in the general fund turned out to be $203,000 less than budget. So we have an issue. It's largely in, well, half of it, 100 grand of which is in the circuit clerk fees. Now, she brought her budget for next year down by 80, but so we could have a $20,000 problem there. But our revenue budget we brought in for 2018, we set at 5.3 million instead of 5.4. Our final for last year for 17 came in at 5.2. So we potentially have a $100,000 problem as we look towards 2018 if it mirrors the activity of 2017. So something to keep in mind. The pressures on the general fund, what I'm trying to say is the pressures on the general fund continue year after year.
I think it might not.
I have to always get my cheat sheet ready or I'm going to lose, when you're asking questions, I'm going to not remember what I figured out, so.
I think, obviously, I would recommend maybe if we can put on the agenda for next month, can we have Lisa come here and maybe help us understand some of those things more, you know, why those, what she thinks is causing those fluctuations in the fees that they're collecting, and is there anything we can be doing, or are we just, it's a product of our county's environment? I guess, at least so we understand it better, because like you said, that's half of
Right.
the reduction in revenue that we had. So if we can start with her maybe and understand it a little bit better, and maybe there's nothing we can do other than hopefully have more people.
Okay.
But just at least understand if there's something in the short term that maybe we can be doing different, or at least understand so people understand why we have the problems that we have.
Right.
I think it'd be good to get that out in the open, or at least if there is something to learn.
Is there traffic down that much, or did you just go by traffic fines?
Yeah. So the
Right.
traffic fines look,
I mean, that's-
traffic fines are down. Do you have any, knowledge?
Some of that has to do with obviously the amount of personnel out there on the road, not just from the sheriff's standpoint, but I know the state police manpower is down as well, statewide, on how many they have patrolling the interstates and state roads. And with fewer folks out there, fewer stops, you're going to prioritize in-progress calls over traffic enforcement and stuff. So that has to do with some of it. What percentage, I couldn't tell you. I can also give you a heads up. There's a new bonding procedure that happened January 1 through the General Assembly, where individuals who, they have category A and B offenses now. And category B offenses, for the most part, are class A, B misdemeanors, some class 3 and 4 felonies. Those folks have a hearing and to set bond, and they get, if they choose not to post and sit in jail, they get $30 a day credit towards that bond. So, for instance, someone who would have a $150 bond, who in the past would pay that $150, that would go to the circuit clerk, plus the $14 bond fee that the sheriff collects, can sit for 5 days now, and they get $30 a day credit. They get released with a court date after those 5 days, and whether or not in the long run you will recoup any costs out of that, I don't know. That's yet to be seen, but that could play an effect on the coming years on what the amount of fees that the courts collect.
Thanks.
I was gonna say on that, traffic.
Yes.
The traffic is down. There's less people moving around over the last few years. Yeah, there's no doubt about it.
It looks like, yeah, the traffic fines were down 15% from 2016 to the end of the 2017 numbers. And, some of it looks like our budget was maybe high because 15 looked better, and maybe we had a similar issue where the year didn't finish up as strong as we thought in 17 when we set that budget too.
Right.
But 15%, I mean, just to pick on the traffic fines one, I guess, has the state police done anything personnel-wise here in the last year, or has that been kind of back in the time frame when
They've been staying status quo. I think they are like most places, when they do get personnel, they end up through retirements or transfers losing personnel. So I think they've been staying basically status quo. But I do know, like most agencies across the state, they're down personnel-wise. So, and my guess would be most counties that, outside of Cook and the collar counties, most counties that collect the traffic fines, the majority of that is what the state police are writing on the roads, not what the locals are, so.
Right. Okay. Nonetheless, it is, I don't know if there's anything we can do about it, but we need to definitely keep an eye on it, and if we can learn any more. If we got further exposure, like the sheriff was pointing out, and that would be good to understand if there's going to be more problems, or I guess just dig into it deeper. Okay. So we're good on department head reports. Oh no, we need.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So we'll move to the FY18 audit with Hope Wheeler's here from Clifton Larson Allen.
Right. Handed everyone all of the reports, quite a few reports again, 4 different reports there. So I summarized them in this presentation here, rather than try to flip through each one. So we wrapped up we came out and did preliminary work for the fiscal year ended November 30, 17 audit back in December, I think it was. And then we did the majority of the field work in January, and then wrapped up in February, got the reports written and through our review processes, and so then able to present finals here today. One of the communications that we're required to issue for our audit standards is called the governance letter, and that is the letter that is addressed to the Finance Committee. Just to touch on some of the highlights of that governance letter, I would want to explain any significant new accounting policies. There was one new governmental accounting standard that was required to be implemented this fiscal year. It's called GASB Statement 77 on tax abatement disclosures. That didn't change any numbers on the financial statements or cause any adjustments, but there is a new footnote in the financial statements, which I'll mention where it is later, that just talks about we're required to disclose if you have any tax abatement agreements to yourself, or if tax abatement agreements of others, such as TIF districts, affects you and reduces the amount of taxes you receive. There's just disclosure information about that. Significant accounting estimates, just like to explain those, since, obviously there are some things when you're on a modified accrual and accrual basis of accounting that aren't cash in, cash out. One of the large estimates, we've talked about this last year also, is the net pension liability and related deferred inflows and outflows. New accounting standard last year, the year before, ESB 68, and that requires an actuarial study. IMRF hires the actuary, and it's based on life expectancy, required contributions, expected salary increases, inflation, etc. So there is a liability recorded for that based on estimates and adjusted each year. Corrected and uncorrected misstatements. So basically, as a result of our audit, we did have some adjusting entries. There were just 3 here we wanted to note as that were corrections that were made. The closing of the revolving loan fund, a correction to that entry. The telephone tax accrual being posted, and then the timing of the revenue recognition of the wind farm settlement. That was a large dollar amount, and it was happening right at the end of the fiscal year, and it was, with the accrual standards, it was decided and effective right before the end of last fiscal year, so it should have been a receivable in revenue last year rather than this year. Just a matter of timing within a few months, but crossed right at fiscal year end. Then uncorrected, we found a few adjustments that we were able to gather up and summarize on a form that is attached to the governance letter. These weren't posted. This first one has been there a couple of years, and this will be the last year for it. It's back to the pension liability adjustment. Some of the IMRF information in the actuarial reports doesn't agree with their final audited information, so we just kind of track that and have passed on adjusting it in the past, but this year that difference got large enough that we actually went with the audited numbers, so we'll stick with the audited numbers from here on out, and you won't have that one anymore. Then we found one, it was a small invoice related to engineering services that wasn't recorded as a payable at year end. So we just track those to make sure they don't add up to a large enough amount that they need to be posted, and want to make sure we share those with the Finance Committee. So not a lot to report there, I'd say, as far as uncorrected adjustments, and then the 3 adjustments that were the larger ones. Disagreements with management in working with the audit, or any difficulties encountered in performing the audit, we want to share with you as the Finance Committee, and we didn't have any significant difficulties in performing the audit. Happy to be here with final reports again in March, and so. All right, now to talk a little bit about the large bound financial statement. Just to summarize it, overall the audit report is an unmodified, which is a good thing. It's not modified for exceptions. It's a clean opinion. So we're seeing that these financial statements are correctly stated in all material respects. Then, as we've talked about in the past, the governmental accounting is complicated, and we have to have 2 sets of statements. So there's the government-wide statements on pages 9 through 11 that are full accrual, like you might see in the corporate world, where your assets are capitalized and depreciated, so depreciation expense is included in there. That pension liability that we talked about that IMRF has calculated, that's accrued there as a liability with the deferred inflows and outflows, and that's all adjusted then through that income statement. Your assets and deferred outflows at November 30, 2017 were $74 million approximately. The liabilities and deferred inflows around $6 million. The net difference between the assets and the liabilities is your net assets, or net position, I should say. It's $68 million at the end of the fiscal year. The change on the full accrual basis of accounting, the revenues over expenses or vice versa, was a net change or a net loss of $293,000 this fiscal year. That includes really all of your funds, except like a fiduciary fund, like township. That does include, I just wanted to point out, because that GASB pension adjustment can cause large swings one direction or the other each year. It's very unpredictable. That includes a $1.7 million adjustment to the pension. So that did drop that number down to be a negative number. Then the fund statements, a little easier to understand. These are on the modified accrual. These start on page 12. There we're required to report a separate column for each major fund. General fund is always major. And then the other funds, and remember the general fund here for accounting purposes includes the County Information Systems Fund. Then the motor fuel tax fund qualifies as a major fund, IMRF, highway, and public health. So those are all shown in separate columns. Then all other funds that are governmental funds are combined in one non-major funds column. So here, and once again here, if you purchase a capital item, it's just expense, it's not depreciated. So you see that difference in there. The general fund obviously is the big fund in these major governmental funds that had excess of revenues over expenditures for the fiscal year on a modified accrual basis of $7,300. So really close to break even there. With remaining fund balance at the end of the fiscal year of $2.1 million. I have some graphs that include the general fund in it that I'll show you. Then all the other major funds had a positive revenue over expenditures and positive fund balances, and those are summarized on page 15. That was the governmental funds. Then you have a couple of proprietary or business type funds. That's the 911 fund and the county farm fund. Those are on pages 17 through 19 combined together. You can see the individual funds back on page 69. But both of those funds show revenue in excess of expense and a positive net position for the fiscal year. On that page 2, there's the group health insurance fund. That's called an internal service fund. So we show it there with the business type funds, though it gets allocated out to other funds. That fund had an excess of revenue and expense and a positive net position for the fiscal year also. And those, as you can see comparatively, those expenses are down from previous years. So the footnotes start on page 22 and go through page 45, so definitely won't go through each of those pages. There, that new note on the tax abatements is note 15 on page 44, just to point that out if you're interested in reading that. The significant new pension disclosures are on pages 36 to 42, and so they do kind of show in detail what is recorded as the liability on the face of the statements. Then just wanted to point out note 17 shows the restatement of the beginning net position related to that correction of the timing of the wind farm settlement income. Then required supplementary information there, we're required to show for each of your major governmental funds, that is general fund or special revenue, budget to actual comparison, and they are similar to what Anita was just mentioning. General fund I know is a key fund that shows on page 46. So here this shows that the revenues were under budget, close to $200,000. You can see that detail on page 46. And then the expenditures were also under budget by approximately $268,000. Then the back of the statements includes all the details of all those non-major funds that get collapsed together into the non-major fund grouping up front. So you can see every individual fund that you want, you can see in the back statements back there on pages 55 through 68. I know it's just throwing a lot of numbers at you, so here on page 6 of my presentation is just a graphical depiction of all governmental funds. So this excludes 911 and the county farm. But this is the revenues, just comparing last year to this year. So hopefully it looks similar to other reports you're given. $12.6 million for 2017. That includes, just wanted to point out, the significant payment for that maintenance of the highway section that was donated. And then the 2016 column, 12.9 million, and that includes the wind farm settlement. If you looked at this for last year, that wasn't in there, but with the adjustment, I included that in here, so you have the comparative since that's now part of fiscal year 16. But you can see there for each category, the revenues compared to the prior year. Property taxes, as expected, the decrease there with the IMRF decrease. Charges for services, it stayed fairly close there in total. Same with fines and fees and licenses and permits. And intergovernmental does show an increase there. And both of the payments I mentioned related to highway and wind farm would be included there. So then, comparing that expenditures by functions for all governmental funds is on the next page, page 7. So here, these are once again very high-level numbers, very categorized compared to the detail you have. But this shows total 2017 governmental fund expenditures of $10.9 million and 2016, $10.6 million. So you can see from the graph here where the increases and decreases were. The general governmental expenses, which is one of the largest categories, is down. Positive direction. A lot of that was the insurance related. So health and sanitation costs were down. Justice and public safety stayed very flat from year to year. Transportation and highways, the other big category, that does show an increase from 2016. That can really vary from year to year, as you know, but that is a combination of MFT fund, bridge fund, township bridge fund, county highway. Each of those, if you look at the detail in the reports, did have an increase in expenses over prior year. Maybe not significantly, but when you added up all the funds, it showed this increase for 2017 over 16.
Those are all just timing issues,
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, on the highway stuff, yeah.
But, like wind farm money that come in, it's gonna be taking care of the roads, and it'll be spent probably mostly in
Right.
the next.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it was all just recorded as revenue as a lump sum, but then you'll be spending it down. And that kind of shows here on this last page, page 8, the fund balances. I just highlighted the major funds here. You can see the general fund, the $2.1 million I mentioned at the end of the fiscal year, so slight increase over the prior year. That shows the 3-year trend. The county motor fuel tax fund, that like we talked about, it shows those revenues come in for that maintenance for the future years on the new highway and that wind farm settlement that'll be spent down in future years. IMRF fund there shows that balances over the 3-year period, then the county highway trend and the public health trend, and that one stays, I think, purposely pretty flat from year to year. All right, then just to go over on page 9, I just summarized the findings that are included in a separate letter here. And we've had 2 findings to report as a result of the audit. One is the 3 adjustments that I already mentioned. So if we have any significant or material audit adjustments, we're required to disclose those. We've talked about each of those. Those are, honestly, 2 of the 3 of them are really one-time, one-off things. The wind farm and the revolving loan fund, so I don't see those repeating. And then the telephone tax revenue, I think, Anita, you'd mentioned you'd done the calculation and just had missed posting it.
Right, I actually did there's a whole analysis that goes behind each of the revenue things, and it's a big spreadsheet that they audit, looking at all the year's revenue compared to last year's. I did the whole thing and actually didn't write up the entry and put it in the computer. Key part of the whole thing.
And I will say, too, for the county as a whole, it wasn't a significant number, but it was part of a fund that the scopes are lower and the thresholds are lower, so it counted as material. So I just wanted to share those, and I'm confident that Anita will make sure that one's posted next year.
I'm sure there'll be something else I forget next year.
So, we'll just recommend, as best you can, continue to review of your final schedules and adjustments at the end of the year, just to look for something that may have been missed. And then the second comment, and we've had this comment before, related to segregation of duties in the sheriff's office. As we've talked about before, and as you know, very limited number of personnel in the office, and so that just triggers that you can't divide the functions as ideally as you want to segregate duties, as you've all probably heard in your businesses. And we run into this at a lot of our clients, especially these outline what we call the fee offices. But there is money coming into these and money being spent out. Not the large dollar items, in this case, at the sheriff's office, not like the circuit clerk's office that has significant dollars coming through it. But we just have to point it out and recommend really, making sure you implement any internal control you can in those areas to help mitigate that risk that's there because of the limited number of personnel. including review processes on a timely basis and documenting those reviews as someone that's not necessarily involved in the day-to-day transactions. We did find this year too, in an expense we tested, it didn't have adequate supporting documentation. It was a very minor item, but just wanted to really make sure you're watching and following the policies on each of those and making sure that there's a review process in place to check if there isn't proper supporting documentation.
I did have a conversation with Sheriff. Hope gives me these findings before we complete the audit, and then I draft a response that says, how are we going to ensure that we catch these things next year? And so I called Sheriff and talked to him about I think it was mostly the commissary, maybe, I don't know. There's some work to do on the commissary account that he's checking on who signs, who's a signer on the account, and who reconciles the bank statement. But then he also said that from time to time he'll review the reconciliations after they're complete. So what he's going to do now is, just initial and date so that we've got documentation that he has reviewed it. So that will hopefully take care of some of it. It doesn't answer all the issues, but we're trying to work on solutions that Sheriff can still function the way he needs to function there, but we're adding these controls in that make sure that we don't have these internal control issues.
Well, good. I understand the problem now. You got the people issues and we don't have excessive people around and it gets hard to do segregation of duties like you pointed out and stuff. But it sounds like we've had this on there for some time, and I think it sounds like they're working through a solution, but if at all possible, I think we got to get it off next year's audit and just put it behind us. Whatever we got to do, whether it sounds like you guys may be working on a solution, but just make sure Hope feels confident in whatever we do. So maybe we should, I guess I would propose putting this on the agenda here and just make sure we follow up on it. And
Okay.
I know we talked about it some last year, but unfortunately, whatever, I realize life happens, but we're back here and we got the same problem again, and I think maybe we should just put it on the agenda, and once we feel like we got a solution, we'll take it off, but just keep following up on it, and then once we feel like, hopefully next month, we could talk about it, and we're good to go, and modify things enough, and just run it by Hope or something, and make sure she feels comfortable with it, so that this is done and behind us, and we're not constraining the sheriff so he can't do his job, and we're doing silly things that make life hell. But also make sure that we're all covering our butt so someday this doesn't come, who knows what, comes back and hurt. We're all on the front page of the newspaper because we got told 6 years in a row and we didn't do anything about it.
The plan right now is that I've got on the commissary account, there are a couple of the COs that have signature rights on the checks. The CO that does the reconciliation of the commissary account does not. So I've got that in place. As far as the sheriff's sales account and the sheriff's fees account, I'm the only one that has signature rights on those checks. My administrative assistant Donna does the reconciliation, but starting now, I'm just going to, each month when she reconciles that, I'm going to review it and I'm going to initial off on the statement that the bank sends us that I look through it and agree with it, and we'll go from there. So
Cool.
hopefully it gets taken off next year.
Yep, that would be great. So maybe we'll just follow up, make sure
The new process is in place.
the process is in place next month, and hopefully all that's happening. And Anita can work with Sheriff, make sure we got that documented right, and make sure Hope thinks that's okay, and this will be behind us.
One quick thing I would suggest,
Yep.
because and I don't remember particularly in this case, but the banks are like to get away from sending canceled checks back with bank statements anymore. So when you're reviewing a bank statement and you don't have the detail, it's just here's a number and a check number, We recommend always requesting that canceled checks come back, so those can be glanced over too. So payee, you can check, oh, this was the payee I really signed off on or I approved. So just, and maybe you're getting those, I don't remember specifically, but that's something I've noticed in other counties and government audits, that the banks are getting more and more away from that, but
Right.
you can request to get them. And it's a good part of the overall internal control.
Copies of them at least, yeah.
Yeah,
Copy of
yeah,
Digital
front
copies,
and back.
yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Great.
Does anyone have any questions on anything I presented, or if you have a chance to look these over, if you have a question, my contact information is in my report.
Almost too clear. Too easy.
No, it's not.
I guess, what do you think our biggest risks are from like a control perspective and things? I mean, this sounds pretty minor, but I mean, in the scheme of everything we have, and like, it sounds like somewhat easily correctable. But undoubtedly, that's not our biggest risk, I'm sure, for potential problems that undoubtedly we're at risk for.
You know, just kind of in general, the risks I see with counties in general are they're all fee offices or elected official offices that do have the right to do their own thing and aren't necessarily sending information to someone in a needed position for review. We always recommend, and I know there's been work done here to improve controls in those departments, including the circuit clerk's office and the county clerk's office. So we've seen improvement there and checks and balances put in place. But once again, it's just an overall protection for each individual to have that review. It's not that this fear that you're doing something wrong, even just to catch an error. So that's always a risk. So any cooperation amongst the departments is great. And then there's only one Anita. And so I think, like, when you wrote your response here, she understands governmental accounting and all these accrual adjustments. It's just there is a lot going on at the end of the year. So, any way to have someone check for trends to see if, maybe this accrual was missed or that, or anything, to just keep watching for different trends to look for something that's unusual and pops out. As you get bogged down with all the year-end entries and reconciliations and preparing for the audit.
Yeah, I actually joked when Hope and we end with a long conference call, typically close to an hour, going through what we find in the audit, what she's found in the audit, and we talk through all the findings and whatever before I draft a response, before it goes in writing and I have to draft a response. And I joked and said, really, can my response to the first finding be that I would like to have myself cloned? No, doesn't work. But it is hard because I'm dealing at year end, and we talked about this too. Through the months of the year, each department head is getting their revenue and expense report the following month and has time to call me and say, hey, Anita, this looks funny. Is this right? If I don't catch it, somebody does, and we have time to get it corrected before year end. But all those year end accrual adjustments, it's me. Yeah. And there is no review. Nobody, it's harder and it's easier, obviously, for things to get missed. So.
Is there, I know your new payrolls clerk seemed to be pretty sharp, or seems to be a good addition. Is there any way we can get her involved to help you during that time, or I don't know? Does she have time or the capability, or don't have to answer that now, but just an idea that.
Right. The accrual adjustments are complicated, but what she could do is, one thing we could do is add to our checklist to have her go through and find every entry that's on the checklist to make sure that they're all posted before. That would be, something.
Yeah, I like that idea.
Yeah.
And by then, she'll have a few months in of experience and be more familiar. And,
Right.
Yeah. And it's not, you mentioned risks, and when you say that, I think talk a little bit more about fraud risks. That's not as much of a fraud risk, it's just of a something getting missed.
Right, right.
Yeah, it's not a good thing whenever you only have one person that knows what's going on, and just when we're in small organizations, that's the problem everywhere, I guess, in every small business and small government, I guess, too. You don't have a backup.
Yeah, the more eyes looking at it, there's a better chance somebody can see something, maybe just,
And at least, and heaven forbid something happened to Anita or whatever, somebody that has ever seen those things might be able to help out the other person, you know, whoever has to
Right.
come in and pick up the pieces, you know, I mean, I think all those things are risks we have, that there's a lot of knowledge in a few people's heads, or one person's head, that we're depending on,
That's very true too.
not just Anita's position, but other ones too.
And we, throughout the process, and like Anita said, we summarize it all at that final call, exit conference we call it. We provide other recommendations that we don't necessarily feel need written up in this report. And one of the things, just to, I guess, commend you all, is getting, just for the purpose you said, getting some written policies in place.
Yeah.
And I know you've been doing that, and they've gone to the Finance Committee for approval, and while it may seem minor, I think putting things in place are
Yes,
easy,
definitely.
make things easier. You know, it's a good business practice, number one, and then if something does happen, if someone leaves, there it is in writing. So I think you're making good progress there.
Well, I think we're gonna talk about that here again in a little bit, but we need to definitely get all that documentation done, and so it helps with all those problems, or any potential problems. So,
Yeah.
thank you.
All right, thank you very much.
Okay, review of elected official salaries. So I believe Anita
That's it.
had provided a worksheet that compares the circuit clerk, treasurer, county clerk, and sheriff, as well as the coroner, to all the other counties in the state of Illinois. At the bottom of that, there's, I think traditionally, this committee has looked at kind of comparing versus the counties that are similar population and size as us, that there's some comparisons of the counties around us and how their salary compare, what their average salary is, and the 5 bigger than us and smaller than us, and then you can compare that with where our elected officials are. Obviously, we don't have a quorum today, so we can't make any decisions anyways, and even if we did, I think we were thinking, okay, present the information to the committee and come back next month and start. I think we need to make a decision next month about what the direction is as far as salary increases in that conversation. But I guess this is just kind of a comparing us to the other counties, so we know we got some information and data points of where our people, our elected officials are versus everyone else. But we definitely have to make a decision, I think, next month in order to comply with the laws ahead of the election and those things. Don't know, do you have anything else to add to that, or do you guys?
No, it's just
Go.
numbers.
Just-
These are from the UCCI salary. The first week of January each year, well, they send it out in December. It's due the first week of January. All members, well, all counties get it, and it's data for every single position in the county and how we compare with other counties. And so I sent it in the first week of January, and I actually just got the report on Monday or Tuesday. And so this is as of January and all the comparison with the other counties. So it's very current data.
Okay.
One thing I'd like to add, and conversation will be coming up, but will the committee consider internally as well on what salaries are? That being said, the office of sheriff, whether it's me that holds it or someone in the future, has 3 employees that base salary make more than what the sheriff does.
Sure.
So that's,
I think it's
I don't
definitely-
think there's any other elected official or department head in county government that same boat, so,
Sure.
I think that, especially for future sheriffs, people who are interested in running or wanting that position, that may be something as well that someone looks at as a deciding factor of if they're going to run for the position or not.
Definitely a valid point, and maybe we can have, I know we had all those numbers back during the budget, but that is way too long ago, but too many piles of paper for me to dig through, so maybe we can put that in perspective and get that to the rest of the committee, so we can take that into consideration, but yeah, I think it's a valid point, and we need to at least consider it, for sure. Anybody else or anything on this topic? Okay. Next thing we had on the list was unappropriated spending for offices and contract service budget overruns. So I just wanted to, what?
I didn't bring a sheet that I wanted to.
I know there's a lot of discussions going on in the management committee, and I just, all these things are kind of interrelated. We have some budget gaps, particularly it sounds like on the snow removal, more specifically the amount of salt we're using, and that's, I think, 3 times what the budget was.
Well,
Maybe
right
you had
now
the
it's
last
at,
numbers.
and that's what I meant to bring and I forgot it, I have the actual. The budget for the full year for salt on snow removal was $7,000 or just over, maybe $7,100. And already we've spent through January, we don't have the February bill yet, but through January we've spent $7,500 on salt. So there's, if you look at February, 7,000 of which was in January, if February is close to that, we got a problem. We are going to have a problem.
I thought we were like $7,000 over after January. Or did I misunderstand that?
No, we're
We
over our,
were flat at the end of January.
yeah,
with
just
the budget,
slightly
roughly.
over.
We were
Yeah,
roughly flat. And then February obviously wasn't
right,
the nicest weather, so
Right.
undoubtedly we're going to be
right.
maybe double the budget then.
Right,
Yeah,
I was
triple, but-
thinking, I was thinking 6 to 8 was my estimate Monday. I really wanted to get that February because that's going to be the tell-all for
Yeah.
where we're going to end up. But I'm saying a good $6 to $8 grand over budget.
And I think there's, I guess from my perspective, there's two things. There's things that happen, no matter what number we put in there, it was probably going to be wrong.
Right.
But by being more, because, and I think that's the question, why is it more? Is it simply because the winter was worse? Undoubtedly this winter was worse than last year. I would think everybody would agree with that. But was it twice as worse? I don't know. But I think those are the things I feel like we need to get, the management committee probably, we need to be making sure or sending a message to them from a financial perspective. We need to get to the bottom of what's causing that, because you and I, Anita and I had spoken about that. The cost of salt per pound hasn't changed, but what, a nickel in 10 years or something.
Right,
So we're putting on a lot more salt than what we had in the past. And like I said, that could be a function purely of weather, but is that all? Are we over salting? I don't know. I'm just throwing out theoretical questions. Are we salting more than we're legally obligated?
Spending more money on salt and less maybe on liability issues of slipping and falling.
I think those are all the questions that we need to get to
The only
the bottom
positive
of.
thing I will say about it, it sounds like you feel that winter is pretty much done.
I hope. Although this morning it didn't feel like that.
I'm saying it's March, it's spring.
But
There should be no more need for salt.
Yeah, but I do believe, we have, just today, we've spoken about, okay, we got fees that are lower, we're over on this, and I got a couple other things that I was going to talk about in the same context, but we got some budget problems, and
Yes.
and I I think looking at any one of those things, we got to figure out why we're so much over.
A quick thought, I believe when we did the sheriff's budget, we budgeted the part-time position in with administrative assistants, which was $10,000. After that budget was passed is when I lost that part-time position. So without having it right in front of me, I believe there's still $10,000 in the administrative assistant salary line item that is extra that could, if the committee chooses to do so, be transferred out into your salt expense.
Sure.
That reminds me of something, just looking at my department, like the area-wide bills were high this month. We had in the month $1,300 worth of service related to 911. In all of last year, we had $500. There were 2 backup issues last year. But see, that position, that part-time position, that was part-time for sheriff, full-time at 911, she did all that IT stuff, and I don't know, how much of that, because that position is now gone at 911, how much the service is going to increase for me. I know that I've had a lot more calls this year so far for 911 than I've ever had in the past. And it's a good thing if we're consolidating and lowering costs overall. I mean, $1,300 compared to that full-time salary is good for the county at large, but for my budget, if it continues, it's going to be a problem.
No, and I think we need to, I know you've been busy with the audit and all those things, but we need to identify those things. I appreciate you bringing that up. I mean, those are the things that, I know some of it's a little difficult, and by having these conversations, we can identify some of those things, but we need to, I guess, reassess. I guess in the corporate world, we would be making forecasts, and,
Right, I know.
And not just relying on a budget we did almost 9 months ago now, and we need to be evolving this, and I know that gets done, but maybe make a more, now that the audit's over, and make that part of our agenda or something to us look at some of those situations or identify them, just so we're having these conversations that shed light on different aspects of it. But I think that, back on the salt thing, my personal feeling is that we need to, we got to get to the bottom of whether we can pay for it or not, or whether we got money somewhere else. What has changed, and why is this number excessive compared to other winters, or, maybe look back further on some of those things, but it seems kind of crazy that we're that much over it. And maybe some of our practices or expectations are part of the problem. That I know we salt the entire parking lot. Is that a legal requirement? Do we need to be doing that? I'm not pretending I know the answer to these questions, but I think some of those we got to get to the bottom of, because we don't have excess money, and we got not just this, but a whole trail of issues like you just brought up of we just don't have extra money laying around for things. And what can we do to be more conservative?
We didn't take the bid to include the salt. We took the bid to pay per pound of salt. So probably if we would have broken that down in management, the better choice would have been to take the all-inclusive rather than the per pound, because what's a pound of salt? A cup and a half. I mean, seriously? You pay per pound.
Well, I understand. So I guess that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying we have a solution here or are going to make one, but presenting the data and getting to the bottom of it, maybe we don't need to be spraying salt everywhere we're spraying. I don't know. I don't come here every day, but those are the things I think we need to look into. But
Know a few other employers that have, a lot of employees. It's a common problem, and it's how much you want to dance with other liability issues that your insurance company takes. Like the hospital, I see some numbers that go through there, and I know what they do with salt, and as far as I'm concerned, it's oversalted at that location, because they end up people's feet, but at the same time, they still got issues of employees slipping and falling, and actually, every time they slip and fall on their property, it's their fault, just like it is here.
Well, and I think maybe that's something we should talk with Randy or whoever about
Requirement.
what is our liability, and I don't know, Jim Devine, whatever, about what's our legal exposure, whoever we need to.
Some of that salt issue is almost any employee walking in the building with improper shoes when there's snow and ice on, termination. Because that's where you look at when they're slipping and falling, they're walking in with some kind of high heel or hard bottom thing, or, cowboy boots. I mean, things that do not work good in ice and snow.
Surely we're not gonna monitor people's footwear.
Well, when you
They
look
will
at
be
the,
buying it.
when you look at the liability claims later, coming in from slipping and falling, you have those shoes on? Oh, okay.
Well, understandably, I think it's just, we need to bring it to everybody's attention that it probably needs to be relooked at on the management claim, but we definitely have a financial problem with it.
Salt always an issue.
Along with that, I know the management committee was going to send to the full board next Tuesday about the lawn mowing contracts and spraying contracts and things like that. And I guess this is just my personal comments. My personal opinion is that, again, it sounds to me, and I wasn't there, but I watched the videos and talked with people, it sounds to me that the debate, we have one bid in that we're going to be considering that's 60% higher than the budget, one that's roughly in line with the budget, and there's a different level of service associated with both of those, and I guess I could understand both sides of that argument, but from a financial perspective, just a purely numbers perspective, an extra $6,000 when we got a $7,000 salt problem, and we got 911 extra IT costs and all these things adding on, it all adds up, and we don't have just extra money for those kind of things. And it begs, in my personal opinion, it begs the question, should we be looking at taking care of our 19 acres of grass in a different way? If I understand the argument that out here we'd like for it to look very nice and pristine, is it worth paying for it to be pristine here and letting the grass out back be waist high and in a prairie grass program? As far as I'm concerned, that would be just fine. That's my opinion. And then both sides we could save money and have nice looking grass too. But I think there's, we in a situation where we don't have money, we need to be making some kind of compromise of that nature so that we have nice looking grass and also aren't paying an excessive amount. The other item included in that discussion item was the spending for the offices. So there's been a lot of discussions about moving people around in different offices and everything, and I know that's a whole long debate, it seems like. It's taken a very long time. Again, from a purely financial perspective, I really don't care who sits in what office personally, but from a purely financial perspective, we don't have money in the budget for that. So to spend that money would be unappropriated money for a non-emergency issue, which is technically illegal, unless I'm sure there's some way where we could vote on it or something. But in the scale of what's important in a county that doesn't have excess funds, and maybe I'm underestimating the need, but it doesn't seem like this is an emergency situation where the town just flooded and we need to dictate funds for EMEA. I mean, people sitting in a different office. I think if we want to put it in, my personal opinion is we want to put it in the budget and appropriate it for in the budget like we normally do, that's fine. But or if there's some other spot where the money can come from, like the sheriff's pointing out that he doesn't have that salary, and maybe that can help with the salt. If we have something like that, I guess that could be discussed as well. But from a purely financial perspective, we need the money from somewhere. And I don't think there's been an estimate, but I just wanted to warn the rest of the board or the management committee that we need money in order to do those things. Okay. financial policies. We're supposed to be reviewing these. We definitely need to get this to be more of a priority. We've talked, waiting for Anita maybe to be done with the audit is a first priority, and we're at that point. That still lays on all of our shoulders, though, to be a part of that process, so we definitely need to take that more seriously here, because we need to get that done before the end of the fiscal year
Correct.
legally, and for all the reasons that our auditor just told us. I did glance over it. It seemed like two of our big outstanding issues that we need input before any of this can happen. If you could get the message back to D, I think there's some information about the financial policies that they need input on. You can explain it better than me.
It's the grant, it's the purchasing for the grants and the processes through that. That is the key part, that is what started this whole thing. That has to be done this fiscal year to conform with the Universal Grant Guidance, otherwise known as UGG. That it was employed or deployed past at a federal level in 2014. Fiscal 18 is when compliance with these policies that's the deadline for that. So that's what started the whole thing, is that portion. So I drafted it, when I drafted that part, I sent it like last August to Dee and Joel, because those are really the two. I think, Eric, I might have sent it to you too, but your dollars are so small, you're not going to be the driver, but you're going to want to pay attention and make sure that you can comply with it. But that was really the question, is I need their feedback that this is going to work for them, or if it's not, what we can do.
Had you heard back from Joel?
No.
So I think we need to, in order to get the ball actually rolling, rather than us talk about it for 3 seconds and move it on to the next month, we need to get Dee and Joel here next month.
I think Joel was going to touch base with him, because all the motor fuel tax money actually is audited by IDOT, the Illinois Department of Transportation. It has to play by the same rules. So in the last conversation, which has been many moons ago, but I thought that's where he was going to look for help at from the IDOT auditors.
Okay.
And you guys have this transportation tomorrow or something?
Yes.
I'll maybe bring that up if you don't mind, Russell, but I do think maybe next month, if we can get a hold of them, and let's get the ball rolling, because we just keep...
sent this to Dee already for review?
But just,
I'll find it.
let's get working on it, so
I'll find it and forward it, so she's got it again current.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, great, thank you.
If I make comments before we move on, what Anita sent me, I did review, and in large part, just like Joel has to comply with IDOT standards, I have to comply with Illinois Emergency Management Agency standards, so in large, what I saw, I'm already doing, so it seems pretty good.
okay.
And I think that's what Joel originally said.
Sure. Well,
But I'm the small guy in the picture, like Anita said.
Right.
I think we just got to make,
but
we
you
just
have
kind
to
of
be
kick the
aware.
can down the road. Yeah.
Anita, could you forward me a copy of that in case I do get lucky enough to find some grants? And
Sure.
Very good.
Stay under
Good
the...
idea. But yeah, maybe that will help us get the ball rolling, and all of us need to be looking at that too, so.
It's called ugly, or what it's called?
It's the UGG, Uniform Grant Guidance.
She's not ugly. Wow, yes. I got it.
If it's the federal government, you know they got to come up with an acronym, so.
I never heard of it.
Okay, anything else on that? We'll go to the cash trend analysis. We're at the end of the quarter.
Yep.
We've got 3 months in the books.
Yep, and you have those. No big surprises there. Everything looks, I mean, look at general fund. It's amazingly consistent year over year, the trend. Where we start, it looks like this, Russell.
Yeah, okay.
It was in your, you got it? Okay. Okay. So you can see there, I mean, we ended the year cash-wise a little bit higher at 1.8 million, which is 4 months of operating cash at this point at the end of the quarter. So GFOA recommends in reserve, not operating cash, reserve, you have 3 to 6 months in reserve. We have 4 months of operating cash, so we're at least not at the basement anymore, or under. Right, and we've got some issues. Right, exactly. So the next page is public health. You see what's going on there. They are getting some cash in. It's higher than was all of last year, well, than it's ever been. So they're at $1,063,000, which is almost at a year in operating cash reserves. 911 ETSB is at an average for this fiscal year of $327,000 or so on a budget of $441, about 9 months of operating cash. And you can see that trend there. And of course, the big thing that we've talked about in the past is, 2015, or January 16 really marks when the new rates got paid by the state of Illinois, that we saw a big increase in their cash. During the low times, 14 and 15, that's when they discontinued supporting the Joint Dispatch Center, but now with this year, we should see that cash decrease because they've committed to funding about $150,000 towards the Joint Dispatch Center, which if you turn the page, the Joint Dispatch Center is next, and you can see the sad story there. Now, look at the end of 2017. It is interesting, in January, or in November, and I had a question during the audit on this because never in the past did we have to accrue at the end of November, remove from revenue receipts we got in November for fiscal 2018. The city of Watseka primarily paid their full 2018 funding in November rather than December. They historically paid half in January and half in May. They paid the whole thing in November, which had never happened before. And at that point, it became material, and I had to reverse that from Joint Dispatch revenue and move it and park it on the balance sheet and then reverse it in December. But the cash was in our account. So that's what you see, that big change there in November. Look at November, October to November, that big increase in cash. And so Joint Dispatch ended the year with a big bump, but you're not going to see that increase that we see in May a lot of other years. So May, June, July, you see that big increase. That city of Watseka, that's not going to happen this year. It happened timing-wise in November instead.
Never complain though, I get the cash.
No, money's in the bank. So that's good. So, I mean, at this point, they've got 4 months of operating cash in, which for them is high. They don't usually have that much room, so that's good. County Highway, you can see where they're at, and they're so consistent, not a big change, but they do carry a large balance. They've got 14 months, over a year worth of operating cash in their bank account that's again operating cash. And then the last page is motor fuel tax, which the number's high, it's sitting on there. That is that, I think it's, I can't remember if it's wind farm or if it's, I should look on this last page. No, wind farm, or the $1.2 million for the Ashcombe slab, which again is what Hope was talking about with those are 2 payments that we've gotten in the last 15, 16 months between them, $2.5 million almost, that will go for road repair, so those amounts their cash balance will decrease as they make those specified road repairs. So
We have it on the agenda for this month.
To spend it?
Well, it takes a while.
Yeah. So,
Okay.
that's what's going on, you can watch the trend there, but that's it for this quarter.
Very good. Claims we won't talk about because we cannot. We'll send those to the full board. Do we have any old business? New business?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn. I
Oh,
don't think
no
we even
motion.
have to vote.
No motion.
We don't even have to say aye. Thank you.